of the building of River Port, and we start at 11, and we will have time to speak about our colleagues, and we ask our colleagues to speak slowly because we have direct translation into English. And now I give the floor to the speakers. Yevhenia Molyar, fine art expert and Izoliatsiya Foundation curator, Alexandra Brashynova, director of Research Department of Art of 20th-21st Century National Art Museum of Ukraine, Natalia Lytovchenko, co-author of Mosaics in the Kyiv River Port, and the daughter of Ivan Lytovchenko, one of the authors of the Mosaics in the Kyiv River Port, and Halyna Vasylevska, lawyer of Izoliatsiya Foundation. Lizaveta German will be with us soon. She is an art expert and researcher, and Anton Fridland, spokesman of RichPort project that now is involved in restoration of the Kyiv River Port, and Halyna Sklerenko, researcher and fine art expert. Dear colleagues, I would like us to start our discussion. Isolation Foundation addressed the Ministry of Culture on the issue of the restoration of mosaics in the Kyiv city port. And I would like to ask you, why did you make this address, and what is the stage of your work now? Good afternoon. I would like to say that Isolation Fund research and create catalogs of arts of Soviet era, and it happens so that we want these pieces of art to be restored and to be preserved, and there are many pieces of art and resources are limited. That's why we just can react on some situations. The same is about Kyiv River Port. We got information that reconstruction is planned, and we started our actions, and we sent an open letter, direct address. We want these pieces of art to be in the register because this building is a monument, and this building is protected. Answer, but it usually takes about a month to such requests, and we are waiting. And I give the floor to Halyna Sklerenko, and she is going to tell us about these pieces of art and their registration. I would like to tell you that I research Ukrainian monumental art starting from 70s. Isolation Foundation research those pieces of art that are registered, and monumental art was in the center of public attention, and media were involved in this process, and a lot of state funds were spent then at that times. And now, during these times, not only Soviet art suffers, but many pieces of art and monuments suffer. And building of Kyiv River Port is a history of Ukrainian art. It is a part of our history, and there are some notes about this building in Soviet times and in our times. It is mentioned in different articles, in different registers, and also in the register on which many people work, and there are proper legal grounds for this. I can't name and can't tell you the number of this law, but these are all legal documents. All monuments that are registered by the state are protected by the state, but the laws are not enforced and they they are not implemented. And this building, we are speaking about mosaics and fresco, and this is not only a stage of Ukrainian art, but this is a cultural phenomenon. And from this, new monumental art started in the second part of the 20th century, and it influenced social environment. And painters who worked on this building, Lytovchenko, Lamach, Husit, Kolomiets, these are all famous painters of Ukraine. And of course, this building should be preserved, and if the destruction continues, we should address to the court then, and we have the right for this. And here, the representative of construction company is present, and I like him very much. And if I like him, we believe that everything will be okay and everything will be possible. And these wonderful pieces of art, this is prestigious for any organization. And I would like to say that this is a precedent. There were many cases like this, and we should fix this information, and we should address to organizations and where these monumental works are present, there should be a special plaque on the buildings that these mosaics and frescoes, that they are protected by the state. It should be fixed in social environment, and in that way we can be able to preserve these pieces of art. And this is a very important illustrative part of our culture. And why we are here today is that researchers, they knew for a long time that this building is a private property, and there are some mosaics that we can't look at them, and there was an information that there's a new owner and someone wants to have a party there. Also about information on an attempted arson there. And it happened so that we met with the representatives of building of River Port, and we also invited researchers who studied the condition of these mosaics. And also our next step was this press conference, and we will provide the information to the public. We will prepare the documents about these mosaics, and we will think what we can do. I give the floor to Yevhenia Molyar, and she is going to tell us about these mosaics. And we will show these mosaics to you. a mosaic made by famous painters, and now we have a lot of mosaics in experimental work. They used ceramics and colored cement, and they combined different techniques in their works. Some of these mosaics are in good condition, and if we are speaking about mosaics like fresco, we see that there's even a hole in this mosaic, and they should be restored. We see several mosaics that need restoration, and also a we don't have a joint view on this work, but we believe that now the times of decommunization, we should preserve this work, because all these works, they are like synthesis of arts, and we should preserve them, and maybe we should preserve it as a remembrance, as a memory. And we asked Halyna Vasylevska to prepare a legal ground why we have the right to preserve this piece of art, because it doesn't fall under the law on decommunization. So we can also speak what should be done with these mosaics, and we give the floor to the lawyer. Whether this mosaic is under the law of decommunization, and whether we should restore this, or maybe it shouldn't be restored because this law is in force. Yes, we have the law on decommunization, and it envisages and its structure several discrepancies and the norms that are of referential character. And we can speak about some mottos in this panel picture, and this is maybe it should be prohibited by the law, but we are speaking about the composition of this picture, and this picture, it provides us with the proper information on Ukrainian culture in previous times, and we shouldn't ruin art that was some of different periods of Ukrainian history, and many pieces of art had that were created in Soviet era, and the law was adopted on the basis of the resolution of Parliament of Europe, and we should have a pluralism in our attitude towards different pieces of art of previous periods. And the implementation of this law should be put in a correct way. We can discuss it for a long time, but there are several practical variants. So some elements can be removed that are, so these are mottos and a flag. But so some elements of the picture can be removed with the symbols of Soviet era. And also, not only the building can be included in the register, but also all the composition, all the mosaics, the complex of mosaics can be included in the register. Because if we will differentiate them and remove some of them in such a way, we will ruin the complex. That's why we should preserve these mosaics as a complex, and we are not vandals. We shouldn't ruin our own cultural heritage, and in such a way we will move with the time and we will conduct a restoration properly. So several words from me. We shouldn't forget that during all Soviet era, monumental and decorative art continued Lenin's plan of propaganda. That's why some removals, so there were some inscriptions, and if we remove something, that will distort the picture. And as of today, this was adopted by people, and we can correlate it. And we didn't take part in the adoption of the law, and we should influence the bodies of power in order to correct this law. And we can't speak with that we can remove something from the picture if we are speaking about piece of art. And there's nothing strange about it. And in our briefing, we should support full preservation of the complex of mosaics in the building of Kyiv City Port. And this complex, that was a stage in the development of monumental culture of the second part of 20th century. Lizaveta German also wants to provide some information.
I agree that this complex should remain integrated. No detail can be changed or deinstalled because the authors are not alive. Of course, there are successors and colleagues, but how can the decision can be taken to modify the artistic work in terms of concept or some other terms? I agreed to Ms. Halyna Vasylevska that the inscriptions, plates should be added, that these are monuments, and also explaining the value of these artistic works, and explaining to young people Soviet history and artistic value of this picture, that not everything is communistic which was created those days, because otherwise all artistic monuments of 20th century should be destroyed. So just explanations should be added. Such plates should appear which explain political context in the modern terms, so that no automatic associations appear that some of course responsibilities. Yes, it starts with the art. Nobody can delete their history. The peoples can't delete their history. The artists work in the epoch in which they lived, and the talent helped them to penetrate between drops, and they were talented, gifted artists which tried to give some fun to the people in those periods, and the decommunization's law is very strange, and it should be revised, I am sure. And this precedent with the river port in Kyiv, this case should become a basis underlying consideration of every monument of the Soviet era. I would like to tell you a few words for the context. As a representative of the river port, the question is not for us. The point is not whether to save these mosaics. Of course, they should be preserved and restored. This is our position, which we articulate every time. The question is, please show the previous slide. We can see here a soldier of the Red Army. This mosaic really raises some issues. It is unambiguous, and I'm not an PR professional. As for me, I see here a person with arms and with the red flag and communistic slogans, and this is out of the context today. This is communistic adding to the entire ensemble. I hope to hear today some lawyers' understanding of such cases. The law has been adopted on decommunization, so we should take into account legislative aspects. I have not heard today any legislative comments as concerns to this law, so I would like to get some legislative substantiation. The action plan has already been drafted. Nobody is talking about destroying this composition, but there is a norm of law whether some changes will be addressed, will be adopted. It will be a long process. So the whole process should not be procrastinated due to this detail. It is a small detail, so interpreting of this law in legal terms results in two ways: the authorship right, the copyright, and the right not to intrude into the composition. This is one legislative basis, and on the other hand we have the decommunization law, which goes that communistic symbols should be destroyed. The law of Ukraine on copyright and allied rights supposes that integrity of the author's work, artistic works, so an integrated composition is protected by the law. But talking about the decommunization processes, we should consider a compromise option. So compromise option in this situation will be to dismantle those parts which fall upon decommunization. It would be the most compromising option. But at the same time preserving the whole complex and dismantling just elements of it, which are controversial to the long decommunization, so we will not have the problem of intrusion into the cultural heritage, and we will be not contradicting the decommunization law and the integrity. Also, this complex should be equipped with the plates with inscriptions, and also the statues of protected monuments should be granted to this building. And as for me, my opinion in legal terms is to include this building to the register of monuments protected by law, and then restoration. This will be the next step. The whole building should be restored as the next step. I would like to give the floor to Natalia Lytovchenko, co-author of Mosaics in the Kyiv River Port, and she's also a daughter of the main author of this complex. And this artistic work demonstrates the history of navigation on the Dnipro River. I would like to start with the fact that this monument was performed in the transitional period. It was innovative work. New materials, novel materials were used. Mosaics, trends, traditions in Ukraine were very old, from Saint Sophia's Cathedral, which contains mosaic. So during Khrushchev's sowing, this monument was created. I was 4 years old when this monument was open. So we are talking about just one picture which is controversial. We support the law on decommunization in our artistic community. Of course, the stars, flags, and the combination and the inscriptions give power to the councils. Now we have the same slogans, and what we saw on February 9th, we had very bad experience, impression. Tiles are in very bad conditions. We are talking about 8 compositions, and the history is demonstrated in those panel pictures. And if no adjustments are made to the Soviet times, we do many efforts to preserve monuments in Kyiv. For example, in the underground stations, the compositions do not contain some very vivid communistic images, and such underground stations as in Libitska. There are stars there without hammer and the sickle, and just the US flag can be forbidden as well. There is a controversial issue concerning Kirichenko's composition at Palace Ukraina underground station. We reached compromise that the law can be amended because the law should not concern artistic works. Just the main composition containing a soldier, it is covered now by a gypsum plate till the matter is pending. The developer, we see here representative of the developer, Mr. Anton Fridland, and we can reach some compromise with developers. For example, in Hryshchatyk restaurant in the center of Kiev, downtown, the compositions had been destroyed there several times. In Soviet times, the artistic works had been destroyed there for nationalistic colors, blue and yellow, and now we are going to destroy the composition, the artistic work in the same restaurant because of the Soviet connotation of the artistic works. So now we need to register the building of Kyiv River Station. This is a single complex of artistic works. There is reliefs of Inkerman stones. This is just Inkerman stones, and a very prominent sculpture Inna Kolomiets is the author. She worked with artist Lamach also, and the composition from Varag to Greeks, and the woman with wheat. This is just women symbolizing Ukraine like motherland. You can see also there were lighting and fencing of metal. All of them are details of the entire complex. It should be maintained, and this composition should be preserved. Of course, the building can be modernized, but the composition should be preserved. And of course, those private businessmen, I wish them to gain profits on using this building. The restoration does not interfere when churches are restored. Some frescoes, they may be in the process of restoration, but the church can be in operation. Well, I would like to give the floor to talk about the vision of development and future activities of the river port building. I would like to thank the river port and the team revitalizing this building. The experts gather today here, and our artistic community position should be consolidated and resolutive, and despite the law of decommunization should be adhered to, we should take a decision not to ruin this ensemble, and that it is not the way out to ruin some elements of artistic monuments, because then some masterpieces can be destroyed, and we can't allow this. Our dialogue should be transposed into specific actions, and I need to tell, as a restoration expert, Natalia Lytovchenko, restoration expert at Saint Sophia's Cathedral, he examined the river port building and issued an opinion. His opinion is that future function of the river port will not interfere with the artistic objects fate, and he also said that some losses happened to this works. You saw the gaps. The restoration specialist said that due to the wetness, excessive wetness, there are some layers of paint have damaged, but he guarantees that he will provide expert support, and he can help with restoration of this monument. Thank you to artistic community, and we are now giving the floor to Anton Fridland again.
Tell us about your position on these mosaics, cultural component, and is it going to be open for the public? And this is important. And other plans for this building that is now is the focus of our attention. First, I would like to thank for this dialogue. This is really important. And as to the future of Kyiv River Port building, and historically it was a place. It's like a gate of Kiev from the side of the river. And at the end of Soviet era, you know that there were no regular connection, and there are only trips for tourists along Dnieper River, and this building lost its function. And if we are speaking about today's mission, it is to return tourist attractiveness to this building, that people could visit this building. And the main component is that this building can be open for the public, and if you have an intention to look at this complex, to see these mosaics, so you shouldn't even buy something there. It is an open place for the public. And as to preservation of this complex, as I told you before, we want to preserve mosaics and its external look. This is one of the main theses, that we should preserve this building as it was, and there should be some organizations or entities that will work there, and maybe a function will be changed, and maybe some internal outlay will be changed, but we will take into account all cultural values, these mosaics, so there won't be any walls that will endanger those mosaics. And globally, we hope that there will be times when there will be some transportation along Dnieper River, as it was before. It was during Soviet times, and many goods were transported by water, and we hope that the state will provide funds for this, and we want that this building could function as a river port building, and that people could use it as and its function should be preserved. And all these boats and all these vessels, they are all the property of Kyiv River Port, and we should do it as they do it in Europe. And everyone will be glad to bring their guests from abroad to this building and to show them and to be proud of this building. And when are you going to start the work? And do you have plans that were adopted that can be open to the public? We plan. The concept will be ready in the beginning of March, and we will meet and present this concept. And now I can give you only the outline of this project. There will be about 15 restaurants or a tourist center where you can get tickets or to get some information. And also there will be some public art space, and also one of the restaurants, it will be the biggest. There will be a museum, restaurant. It will be museum restaurant that will be dedicated to the history of this building. And also we plan that this building will be an extension of the Brashynova Square. And if there's some events held in the square, the building of Kyiv River Port will be some sort of the platform. We want to be a part of renewed Brashynova Square, and so we should create a united cultural environment. And what about the dates? The works will be started in spring, and in the summer that will be the start of the first part of our project. Thank you for your opinion, and as it was said before, expert initiative was created spontaneously, and now we can understand what we should do. And I would like every speaker to briefly tell us what will be his or her participation in this project, because everything was started on Facebook, and people, they started the activity. These were the representatives of civil society movements and some of the activists. They want to speak about the concept of the development, about general things, and we as representatives of arts community, we started to speak about mosaics, that they will be available to the public. Can you tell us what will be your role, whether you will attend these meetings? And I'm the representative of UCMC, and we are ready to provide platform to conduct press conferences, presentations, and information campaign is very important. We studied this issue for half a year in different parts of Ukraine. We start with the Yevhenia. I like the idea of restoration of the building of Kyiv city port and Isolation Foundation, Soviet Mosaics in Ukraine project. We will provide consultations. That will be professional, and we will try to continue cooperation with the Ministry of Culture, and this building should be provided with a special status, and we will provide all support. And I believe that we should greet this initiative of restoration of this building, and we should continue the dialogue and to monitor the process. And from museums and museum specialists, I can say that we fully support and we are ready to participate in the restoration. And we, as a section of Monumental and Decorative Arts of the Artists Union, we will help. We will have photos, and we can help with the materials that are needed, maybe some ceramics, and we have some stock of some fragments. And also artistic part of this project and copyright. We should control this process of restoration and reconstruction. From legal point, what we see that our address should be answered to get public information, to provide the opinion of competent body, because now we are speaking about community, but there are some organizations. We addressed 5 competent organizations, but we didn't get any answer about this, and there was no answer at all. So the first step is to get answer to this information, and the second step is to direct an address. And as Zhenya told us, the answer should be reviewed by for the months, and then the decision will be taken in several months, and in cooperation with revitalizers, as we can say, so, if we may say so, and also provision of special status, and we should preserve this building, and we should provide a status that this building is protected by the state. And this should be provided not only to the building, but also internal elements and mosaics included. So 2 words from me. We will continue the dialogue, and we hope that there will be an opportunity to cooperate with the initiative group different issues, and when we start this restoration, and we have a question, and we may say that there are some problems with communist symbols, and we hope to get support from you, some resume, your opinion on this, and we will work with experts in order to hear their opinion on this. That's what I wanted to say. And we are the most competent experts. I mean, art specialists, and of course, ideology changes, but we are here, and art is here, architecture, and also mosaics and pictures, and we should be wiser than at our power and the situation in the state. We all say that the power should leave, but we will stay, and building of the Kyiv River Port will stay. And Katkova Lytovchenko Lamach pieces of art and reliefs of Kalameets, they will stay because they are history of our culture, and this is a precedent. Our cultural community should gather and do everything possible to prevent these Soviet methods, to stop the Soviet methods. They should not repeat. Now, when we go to Europe, we should start our Europe here in Ukraine. Let all of us, art specialists, architects, entrepreneurs, we should be Europeans in the state, and everything will be great. We have 3 minutes, and we have one question. I wanted to draw your attention to the media resonance. When the access was provided to this building, some people got there and they made some pictures of these mosaics, and this information was disseminated through social media, and people provided comments that these things are truly wonderful and they are of value, and these mosaics and other mosaics, we should disseminate information about them. People should know about them, and whether they are ideologically harmful, this issue will be lifted. May I ask the question? Marishak Leonid, I'm a curator at UCMC Cultural Department, and I would like to sum up. And it is about the question of Anton, about mosaic that is in the building of Kyiv City Port. When we are speaking about decommunization law, we forget that now we don't have the methodology on these buildings, because I want to address the lawyer, and these laws do not this is not about architecture, and here we have experts from museums, and they say that it is a complex, monumental, decorative complex. There's no even a question, and this building does in this law it isn't said anything about this slogan in Ukrainian, so this is not a question. It's not about decommunization law. It's not a problem. And as to the building, you said that this mosaic, they say there's weapon and red flag, and 2 other mosaics, Voraks to Greeks, and do you think that those people are without arms? Or Bogdan Khmelnytsky has also a weapon in his arm? This is some sort of lyrics, but we should be more conscious, and we shouldn't speculate with these things. And as to the request to the Ministry of Culture, this ministry is the most incompetent body in this issue. And it's some sort of utopia to ask them about these things. We together, we are experts. We have to work on this issue. And as to mosaics, they are in private property, unfortunately. Sorry, but unfortunately they are in private property. But we want them to be public, but they are public property. These mosaics, they should be preserved, and this complex is unique. A transitional period when mosaics was born as the element of the life of our parents and our predecessors, and this is a revitalization, and the case of preservation is the most acute. And as we told you before, and I ask from UCMC to pay your attention to this. And if there will be some conclusions from those who will conduct restoration, they should have some proper opinion on this. And we shouldn't just discuss this issue. There's a lot of work, and there are many different art objects in Kyiv. But people say that we don't have money in order to provide these funds for these projects. And decommunization laws, they are important, but we should speak about the methodology, how to implement them, and not wait what others do. And about city councils, there are consultative councils of people, and this is a good practice when the public is involved in the creation of such methods. And Zhenya was involved in such a project, and also in qualification whether these objects are of cultural value. And we should initiate public discussions and create initiatives or create a public council that would influence this decision. And this will be the consolidation of what we discussed today, to unite experts, to create legislative initiative at the local level, and then all Ukrainian initiative. Thank you. Next speakers. And all the questions we can discuss in the whole of Ukrainian Crisis Media Center. And thank you very much for participation. Till the next time, goodbye.
Я, конечно, следующая, но я ж хочу быстро тетку заставить. Я нашла фотку. То, что я хотела.
А что ты хотела?